Today's episode, we talk to the CEO of Harris Health System, Dr. Esmaeil Porsa. He shares about his incredible experience of being a new CEO of a hospital system at the beginning of a global pandemic. And he shares some incredibly vulnerable stories and insights that really highlight the impacts of culture in healthcare. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to Love as a Business Strategy, a podcast that brings humanity to the workplace. As you know, we're here to talk about business, but we want to tackle topics that most business leaders shy away from. We believe that humanity and love should be at the center of every successful business. I'm your host, Jeff Ma. I'm a director at Softway, which is a business-to-employee solutions company that creates products and offers services that help build resilience and high-performance company cultures. I'm joined today by President and CEO of Softway, Mohammed Anwar. Hey, Mo, how's it going today?
And good. Good to see you guys.
And our guest today, I will not waste any time. His name is Dr. Esmaeil Porsa. He has a very lengthy list of credentials that I wrote out, to be honest, for this podcast, and then I had to condense by like it's like a fourth of what is written. So go on LinkedIn, check him out. He's got a lot of credentials, but he's had a unique experience in his storied career in the healthcare industry. He's been working in population health management and hospital system operations with a focus in quality and patient safety, program design, and process improvement efforts. Dr. Porsa has served in a variety of leadership roles over the last 20 years, including medical director, VP of medical affairs, chief medical officer, and chief strategy officer. But currently, he's the Chief Executive Officer for Harris Health System. Welcome to the show, Dr. Porsa. How are you?
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here. And good morning, Mohammed.
Good morning.
So I don't know if you know this, but we do an icebreaker before we get started on anything. We are going to dive deep into your story and Harris Health soon, but we have to get through this first. But I'll give Mohammed the question first so you have time to think about it. The question today is, Mohammed,
Yes.
what is a nickname people have called you in your life, and what's the story behind it?
Oh my gosh, are you serious? This is okay. So I've been called Curly Wurly in school.
What?
Yes, because I used to have curly hair. I mean, now I gel it to like keep it straight and short. But in school, my hair was like all over the place and it was curly, and there weren't a lot of other kids in my class that had curly hair. I think I was the only one. So my nickname was Curly Wurly. I was strange, but yeah, that was my nickname through most of my schooling.
That's incredible. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing. That's your best icebreaker answer ever, by the way.
Thank you.
Dr. Porsa, what is a nickname that some people have called you in your life, and what is the story behind it?
Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay, I got to be honest, right? I can't just make things up. No, yes. Well, it's okay. In Dallas, I was used to be called the Persian stallion, and not for the reaction that Mohammed is showing right now. It really was not that. It was for fun. There was a kind of a employee appreciation event, and there was a Jeopardy game, and they were going around and asking people to kind of introduce themselves. But the host started by introducing himself and giving himself a nickname, and that kind of went around. And when it came to me, I have no idea what happened, but me being Iranian, I introduced myself as Dr. Esmaeil Porsa, aka the Persian Stallion, and that stuck.
You got to be careful. It'll stick.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I love it.
And actually, I used to have an iron stallion statue behind me. I removed it because I had to explain to everybody what that meant.
Oh, wow.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. That's
Sure.
Awesome. But what we're here to talk about, obviously, it's called Love as a Business Strategy. Before we dive in, though, I want the audience to understand a little bit more about Harris Health, if you don't mind. And you're the CEO of Harris Health. Can you tell us a little bit about Harris Health and what's unique about it, maybe?
Sure. So Harris Health System is the safety net hospital system for Harris County and the city of Houston. We are the fourth largest safety net hospital system in the country, actually, and largest in Texas. And what makes us different than other health systems is our safety net designation. What that means that, if you imagine if you've ever been to the circus, you see people walking on tight ropes. Underneath them, usually there's a safety net, so that if they fall, the idea is that the safety net catches them and prevents them from getting harmed. The safety net hospital system is basically that. We are here to catch people who fall through the cracks as far as their access to healthcare. So we provide care to everyone, regardless of their ability to pay for it, regardless of their insurance status. And that's our job, and that's our role. Our funding is a third and a third and a third. Basically, a third comes from the federal government, a third from taxes, local tax support, property tax support, and the third is through collection from patients who are able to pay.
Interesting.
And I can tell you about the system. We have two hospitals, Bentop, which is our level 1 trauma center, and LBJ Hospital, which is a level 3 trauma center. Interesting, LBJ is half the size of Bentop, but their emergency room is actually as busy, if not busier, than Bentop Hospital. And then in the community, we have 18 clinics scattered across the Harris County, where we provide primary and specialty care services. That's Harris Health System in a nutshell.
Interesting. So Dr. Porsa, can you share some of the challenges that you face as a safety net hospital that maybe traditional hospitals don't face?
Yeah, I think traditionally speaking, the biggest challenge is always the uncertainty about our funding status. If you can imagine, moving from a Republican government to a Democratic government, back to a Republican government, and what happens with regards to how provision of care is viewed in terms of a human right versus a privilege. It really, our funding is always in question, from year to year. I don't know if you guys know about the waiver program or the Event 15 waiver district program. It really came to exist for the states that did not expand Medicaid almost 12 years ago at the beginning of the Affordable Care Act. So the state of Texas is one of those states that did not expand Medicaid. In order to encourage the states, give them time to think and finally expand Medicaid, 1115 waiver was created where we are able to draw federal money to pay for our uncompensated care. And it's a lot of money. And this year, that funding is supposed to end. And there's still a question mark exactly how that's going to be replaced. So that's unique to safety net hospitals because we depend on that type of funding.
Got it. Interesting. And in terms of your staff, how are you staffed? Because it's a different type of hospital system. Do you have employment, or are you partnered with university system? Like how are you staffing your hospital system?
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of also different as an academic medical center. So all our provider staff, that's our physicians, nurse practitioners, and physician assistants, they're actually contracted through either Baylor College of Medicine or UT McGovern Medical School. Now, the rest of the staff, nurses, techs, everybody else, they are employees of Harris Health System. And right now we have close to 10,000 employees and a little more than 2,000 contracted providers through either UT or Baylor College of Medicine.
Got it. So does that mean it's also like used for teaching in addition to providing the services?
It is. So it's part of actually part of our mission is to become a premier academic medical center. And so, being a safety net hospital, part of our mission is providing care to folks, especially those who need us the most, those who don't have access to healthcare. But a very large part of our mission is also our training, acting as a training center. More than 50% of all physicians who practice across the city of Houston trained at Harris Health System.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's interesting. So, with respect to other hospital systems in Houston or Harris County, how is your relationship with them? Do you guys have like any kind of connection to the other hospital systems in the area? Do you guys collaborate, or how does that work?
Yeah, so that, if you had asked the previous CEO probably a couple of years ago, you would have gotten a different answer.
Okay.
So we, Harris Health System, Baylor College, the Bentop Hospital is actually smack in the middle of the Texas Medical Center. So we are considered part of the Texas Medical Center hospital system, which, if you don't know, is the largest conglomerate of hospitals in the world. And nothing even comes close to it. But to answer your question, we do have a relationship. It's really, I've had this conversation in different settings. We certainly do not compete for volume. Our patient clientele are different than the normal patient clientele at, Memorial Hermann or Methodist or St. Luke's. So it's really not a competition. There is collaboration. The collaboration was actually strengthened, if you can imagine, for obvious reasons during the COVID-19. I think it really, really forced the issue of collaboration where we had to rely on each other, not just in terms of sharing information, knowing exactly what was going on at each hospital, and we were completely transparent with regard to that, but also things that you don't normally think hospitals would collaborate on. Our PPEs, our gloves and gowns and hats and shoe covers. We were actually good at a point where we became very close. We collectively became very close to running out of PPEs. So we were sharing, we would have extra gloves and maybe St. Luke's had extra gowns. So we would swap. Or maybe, we had N95 masks and they had surgical masks and we would swap. So we do definitely collaborate. The collaboration had gotten a lot better as a direct result of COVID-19.
I believe, Dr. Porsa, you joined Harris Health in January of 2020. Is that correct?
March 2nd.
Oh, March of 2020. But basically, right? Like it's like the worst, like first day of work ever or something, I assume. What I just want to talk a little bit. I mean, yes, about Harris Health and COVID, but even you yourself, like tell me about that experience of jumping into this job at that time. I mean, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, well, nobody could imagine that, right? I mean, nobody would have forecasted this. So yeah, so March 2nd, I started on the job on a Monday. And I think that Friday is when, I attended my first meeting with the county officials talking about this new thing that is called the novel coronavirus. And a week later, we had the first case here in Houston. The week after that, what was that event in Houston? The rodeo was shut down. So, I mean, it was bang, bang, bang. And before I knew it, I was in the thick of a global pandemic. So, I've had this conversation actually several times, and people ask me, "Oh my God, poor you. You start as a new CEO, the first time as a CEO, and a large hospital system in a large county, and COVID-19 hits." I know it's true. There were times where things got hairy, where we were actually running out of capacity at the hospitals. I remember having this conversation with one of my board members, and she was asking me, "So, Dr. Porsa, what's the plan?" I said, "Well, phase 1 plan is this." So, okay, so then what? So, well, phase 2, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, great. What is phase 3? I said, well, phase 3, we're going to convert our PACUs to ICUs. So, okay, what is phase 4? So phase 4, we transform our ORs, into ICU rooms. Okay, and then if that happens, we get to that point, then what? I said, then we pray. There is nothing else. There is no phase
Wow.
5. It's like, this is it. There is nothing else we can do. And luckily, we never got to that point. But, I say that, but also I have to qualify the experience. COVID-19 has been terrible, terrible, terrible in terms of lost lives and everything else that happened because of it. But it did a couple of things also. One was that it actually forced all of us, to the previous conversation, to really become collaborative in what we did. The other thing was that everybody, just all of a sudden, it's just like the light bulb went on and everybody became innovative. I remember, when I arrived here on the scene, March 2nd, I'm very, very interested in virtual care. And I asked our community health leaders, what is our virtual care platform? So, well, Dr. Porsa, for the last month, we're just beginning this transition. And last month we had 2 virtual care visits, and we are very, very happy about it. Well, since then, since March 2nd of last year to this year, we now have at almost close to 1 million virtual visits. But it's not just us, right? So everybody had to really, really expedite their learnings and their abilities. But really, really important to me personally as a CEO was that it forced me to develop relationships that otherwise would have taken me a very long time to develop. My relationship with the county commissioners, my relationship with the county health department, with the county judge, with the rest of the CEOs. I can't even imagine how long it would have taken me under quote unquote normal situations to develop those relationships ever, to develop those trusting relationships out of necessity. So yeah, there were a lot of bad with COVID, but there were some positives that happened just out of necessity.
Sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I think
just a little.
Sorry.
Just last. This is not a question, so you have the stage. I just want to add context for the listeners who are not familiar with the Texas or Houston area or these things. When you hear Harris County, I just want to be clear. It's the largest county in Texas. I think the 3rd largest in the nation. So we're talking like 4.5 million people plus in one county. So I think sometimes people don't get that context of what we're dealing with here in the Harris Health System. So I just want to add that. Go ahead, Mo.
I was just going to say, I think the whole aspect you brought up about innovation and building relationships and, having that collaboration, we refer to that as vulnerability-based trust, because you just talked about trust. And usually that comes into existence when you have high risks, emotional exposure, and uncertainty. And I feel like COVID-19 presented all of that in the situation and in our lives. And I think, like to your statement earlier, it accelerated everything that could have taken you probably months or even years to build such relationships and getting that collaboration level going. In fact, some of the highest performing teams operate, at the highest levels under situations of high risk, emotional exposure, and uncertainty. And I think we saw the whole globe do that all at the same time, which is very uncommon and something that was really real for us last year. So that makes complete sense how you witnessed it in your own surroundings and the hospital systems. That's really crazy. So Dr. Porsa, it's, obviously you landed in your new position as a CEO right in the middle of COVID-19. But for you personally, what were some of the challenges that you faced as a leader, as a CEO of a 10,000 employee organization?
Sure. I have spent all my professional life working in safety net hospital systems. Either originally here in Harris Health, then Parkland in Dallas, and then back to Harris Health. So it was really not a struggle understanding the mission. That was very clear. And yes, I've had different leadership roles, but never as a CEO, and definitely not a CEO of such a large hospital system. So of course, you have some doubts, you have some questioning in the back of your mind. Are you ready for this? And you do your best. You read about how to spend your first 90 days and this and that. And I did all those things. And of course, you start, and then COVID-19 hits, and everything goes out the door. Uh, the main challenge is just, if I could name a few of them, one, being in charge, being the final voice, being the ultimate decision maker. I don't think you can prepare yourself for that until it actually happens. I think that was two things. It was very, very scary, but also very gratifying, to be able to have an impact and feel empowered to have that impact on the lives of not just the people that you serve, but to your point, the 9,000 plus employees. That was one. Really, really interesting. And I think that's part of being the first time CEO, is that I didn't quite appreciate that when I said something, it didn't occur to me that everybody around me heard it as the CEO saying something. And it literally took me a few months to get used to that. So when I would say something, I would always have to kind of check with myself in my head. Okay, be careful what you're saying, because people are going to react to it. Even though you may just be expressing an opinion, you may be thinking out loud. Be careful, qualify it as thinking out loud, because otherwise people actually react and then follow through. So it took me a couple of times and a couple of missteps and misfires. But I would say something, and all of a sudden the following day I will have an extensive report on my not my intention. But it took me a while. It took me a while to understand that. I think the biggest challenge, Mohammed, and this is something that's really interesting that stays with me even today, because I felt so terrible about it. It was at the peak of COVID-19, and I remember it was bad news after bad news after bad news. The hospital was getting inundated. We were running out of supplies, and just like it was really. And one of the things that, because as a CEO, it becomes 24/7, right? You're just like, you can't disconnect, especially at the heat of a pandemic. I remember it was, I think, in the middle of the week, and we had, every morning we were meeting as the CEOs at 7:00, including Saturdays and Sundays. All Texas Medical Center CEOs were getting on the call to check in. And then at 10:00 in the morning, every day, including Saturdays and Sundays, we, Harris Health System, would have our own incident command center meetings. We were just, everybody's checking in and finding out what's going on in the hospital, what's going on in the clinics. And I remember that I was, that one day I was overwhelmed with everything coming at me, and I did not react well. I wasn't aggressive, but I was very flat, and I was very instead of, I see my role, one of my roles as a cheerleader, as the motivator. And that day I completely failed as a CEO. I was flat. I was dejected. I was defeated. It was just a terrible meeting. and spend the rest of the day just really feeling bad about it. And until the following day when when we had the incident command center, and I had to apologize to everyone in the call. I said, guys, I know I failed you yesterday, and I promise I will never do that again. I don't care what is going on. I know that I have a great team, and I do have a great team. And regardless of what is happening, I know we can find solutions, and we can move forward. So that was, talking about the big challenge. That was a huge challenge. Realizing that, and I don't know, I've not read a textbook about what a CEO is supposed to be like, but I can tell you in my mind, as a CEO, I cannot let my team down by not being the additional shot of energy that they needed at that time. Yeah, so that was a huge lesson. So, it's really interesting because I've always prided myself in the fact that it's really difficult to catch me without a smile on my face. But that day, I really don't know what was going on, but yeah, that was not me. And it was, and I still remember that feeling.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that, Dr. Porsa. Like, I think that takes a lot of courage for anybody in a position like yours to be able to share that the way you just did. But I'm witnessing, just by you sharing that ability to take ownership, ability to realize and have that self-awareness that you did in almost real time, it feels like, is actually one of the needed traits of a leader. And the fact that I feel like you were able to even go on the call the next day and apologize to your team is not common. And most of the times leaders may not even recognize that they've done that, right? Because they may not even have realization of how they came across. So I'm looking at that as your superpower, to be honest, the ability to recognize that you may have, let down your team, you may have made a mistake, but also your ability to go and confess and apologize. I think that's quite inspiring and motivating just for me to hear, to be honest. Jeff, I don't know what your thoughts are, but that's not commonly seen.
Yeah, and I think there's a blind spot for leaders in this. I think the higher up we go, you mentioned earlier, like how it took you time to even realize that everything you say and do is being watched and kind of meticulously picked apart. And that's magnified, right? I think as the higher up you go, the less you're allowed to have a human moment or a bad day, because there's a reaction every time. And it's really unfair, right? Honestly. But I think it's really powerful I don't think the goal is to find a way to never have a bad day. I think the goal is to find and build an environment that allows you to have a bad day and still come out of it stronger and better for it. So I think you demonstrated that there. I think that's a great story. I really liked it. So
I appreciate that. It
I
taught me a
totally
lot.
agree.
Yeah.
No, amazing. And I think I hold a position similar to yours, except I don't manage 10,000 people, but I strive to always be my best. But the days that I cannot be positive and optimistic and that cheerleader, I've had moments where I will have show on my face. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and people automatically recognize that, okay, there's something wrong and he's not motivated, or something's really behind the scenes, something's going on. And the more I've recognized and openly shared that, hey, I'm sorry guys, today I'm not having a great day, and apologies if I'm able to share my emotional state so that they don't go into the meeting assuming things. I've noticed that my team actually becomes much more supportive of me. They are there to be my cheerleader, because at the end of the day, I think they're able to see me as human and not invincible, like this flawless leader, but someone who is flawed, who does have ups and downs, who so I've noticed that it's actually opened up these doors of relationships with my team around me where I actually feel supported and not lonely at the top, you know? And so I think you may have unintentionally opened up those doors of care and support by your team because you showed to them that you're human and you had a bad day, and then coming out and apologizing probably changed their whole perspective of you as a CEO. And it took me a while to recognize that fact, that at times it's okay to be human. It's okay to have a moment. And in fact, over here they have a name for it. They call it the moment with my name. It's like Mo had a moment. And
Yep.
it's actually humanized me and given me this incredible support system that I never thought a CEO or the leader at the top could have, because I always used to have this philosophy or belief that it's lonely at the top. The higher you go up, the lonelier it gets. But I think it's a myth. And there are opportunities for leaders to have a team that corrals around you to help support you in times of you being human. And I think it's really important that leaders recognize that. But obviously, just hearing your story, makes me confident that it's probably already happened and happening at Harris Health for you as well.
I hope so.
Well,
I hope so.
I think we've broached the topic of culture now. So I'm curious, Dr. Porsa, like, how would you describe the culture at Harris Health right now?
It, okay, not ideal. And I'm going to qualify that. What I mean by that is that this is not where I'd like for us to be. And I believe, we have completed our journey. There are things that are lacking. And it's really interesting, because, asking me about the culture of Harris Health System, I'm telling you through the lens of Esmaeil Porsa, what I see not right or ideal right now. What is ideal is the spirit of the being truly mission driven. We are there. It's perfect. It really is great. The ability to forge trust, the ability to make decisions. Decisions are made every day, all day, obviously, because otherwise we would not be able to function. But to be able to make decision without the not fear, but concern about how it might be evaluated. We are not there. We are not there yet. Mm-hmm. This is something actually that brought with me because I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you a story. So many years ago, in my role as the chief strategy officer, something caught my attention. We had an employee evaluation satisfaction survey one year, and there were 3 items that were directly related to the score for employee satisfaction that had scored very low. It was respect, recognition, and trust. Very interesting. The following year, the same 3 items. The following year, the same 3 items. And just like, and we were always struggling as a system trying to, figure out, what are we going to do? What are we going to address? So guys, it's screaming at us that our employees are not happy with the respect that they're receiving. They're not happy with the way we're recognizing them, and they don't trust the top leadership. That's what we need to fix. So it's actually now become part of our value statement, the respect, recognition, and trust at Harris Health System. I really believe that it is really the foundational values that we must address. And I speak every couple of weeks at our new employee orientation. I feel it's important enough for them to hear from the CEO about this three pillars of respect, recognition, and trust. And I tell them, respecting, yes, our patients as active participants in the care that we're providing them, but also respecting each other, respecting those who serve us, respecting those that we serve. Recognition, we are in a journey to higher reliability organization. Part of that is preoccupation with failure, identifying errors, using them as teaching moments, and all of that. Great. Really, really important to balance it is recognition. There's a lot of excellence that happens around us, and we need to spend the time and resources and energy to recognize that. And trust. Without it, nothing else really matters. It's not, and if not impossible, it becomes really challenging to do anything if there's not a trusting relationship, again, at all levels, among ourselves, those we serve, those who serve us, but also tell our employees to trust your training. I find those three things, respect, recognition, and trust, as fundamental. And, ask me about the culture at Harris Health System. I don't think we are there yet with regard to the respect, recognition, and trust. And that's what we're working on.
What do you think is the obstacle in the way of building up those three values, according to you?
I think it's human nature, is self-doubt more than anything else. I struggled with it. It wasn't easy for me. I told you a story about, coming back the next day and apologized. It was not easy. It was not, I lost sleep over it. And, I know that, when you're talking about 10,000 people, they all bring a little something to the mix. A lot of positive, but, we all have our, experiences and and baggages that we carry with ourselves, that prevents us to achieve those ideals until we actually become intentional about them, right? You become intentional. You identify that, yes, I'm struggling with respect because of X, Y, and Z, and we should do better with recognition because of this and that. And why is it that there's a trust issue with mid-level managers, directors, and vice presidents and above? And how do we go about addressing them? It's really interesting. This is actually kind of eye-opening for me as well. I'm having a bit of a light bulb moment. On Sundays, I go to the hospitals and I visit folks at the hospital, and people always ask me, why do you do that? You can become facetious about it and say, you're trying to improve, patients, employee satisfaction or whatever. And I've always felt that, I go because it actually energizes me. It really, really does. When I go in, I'm flat. When I come out at the end of the day, I am full of energy and ready for another week. But not that, as I'm having this conversation, it occurred to me that it's really creating a relationship of trust. Yesterday, I was at the hospital, and this actually happened. I witnessed. Went into one of the units, and there was a lot of commotion, and there was security officers, and there were doctors and nurses, and we had a patient who was suffering from acute psychosis, and she was just irate. She was just using every slur, every curse, she was just like all over the place, and people were trying to manage her, medicate her, counsel her. I didn't do anything. I really didn't. I was just standing there. I was just watching it happen, and really, really impressed with the level of competence and professionalism. But before I left, one of the nurses, she didn't even say anything. She kind of like just made a gesture, just like she saw me. You can't put a price on that. I don't say that to self-promote. I say that what does it take to create a trusting relationship? Whatever it takes. You become visible. You become vulnerable, like you said. So that's really interesting. It just occurred to me that I'm actually addressing one of the pillars.
Awesome. No, I totally appreciate that. And Jeff, I don't know, I follow Harris Health's social media handle, and they post pictures of you visiting even through last year during the thick and thin of COVID-19. You were at the front lines, supporting your staff, being there with them. And they used to put up pictures of you with the staff, and you could see how happy the staff was just to have you in the front lines with them. And you were giving them all of the respect, the recognition, and even some of I've noticed like Houston Chronicle and the ads and some of the promotions that you've put up in the press all through 2020. It wasn't a promotion of Harris Health. It was a promotion of the people of Harris Health. And you recognize them, and you recognize them for their sacrifices and heroism and everything. And it's very uncommon. Like there were full page ads, not on Harris Health, but the people of Harris Health, for many times over the course of last year. And it's a very different coverage of press versus before 2020 for Harris Health. So it was really incredible to see. It wasn't a self promotion. It wasn't like promoting your services, it was really genuinely promoting the people of Harris Health. And that was very inspiring for me to witness, because I've been following it, and I follow your social media handles with Harris Health. And I think with discipline, you've shown up to the hospitals at the front lines every weekend just to go show your support, and that's it. And that's really unheard of, very uncommon. So kudos to you for being able to do that and being there with the frontline staff and showing your support, and just your presence probably uplifts them just as much as you're having a realization that uplifts you. So really amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I wanted to ask, how do you feel? You mentioned high reliability and patient safety and outcomes is one of the big drivers of any hospital system. How do you attribute that to the culture of a hospital system and an organization? What are your thoughts on that?
So, when you talk about high reliability organization in the health system, bottom line, we're trying to arrive at a zero patient harm situation. You can be, and I have been part of where you become very draconian, right? Zero patient harm means that every time there's patient harm, somebody's head gets chopped, and that actually happens. There are systems that's how they try to achieve high reliability organization. So that's one approach. And the other approach is, when we're talking about respect, recognition, and trust, we also talk about the just and accountable culture, realizing as a system that, and I don't know, Mohammed or Jeff, how much you guys are familiar with the construct of error, especially when it's in healthcare system and patients, is that and I'm going to ask you all to kind of use your imagination. The way I draw it is like a rectangle or a pizza slice, laying on its side. There's always a point at which the error reaches the patient, and usually at that point there's a person present, a tech, a nurse, a doctor. But what the systems usually miss is the rest of the pizza, the rest of the triangle, everything that lined up to get to that point where the error reached the patient. So how does that interrelate with the cultures that, as a system that really believes in kind of a just and accountable culture, is that you embrace that, you realize that majority of the time, far majority of the time, yes, there was a person at the point of the error that could have potentially prevented it or recognized it. But that person usually is not at fault, is the system that created the opportunity for that error to reach the patient. It's the system that put that person at risk of being at the point where the error occurred. So yes, it requires a culture change to really, really embrace that understanding to get, and I really believe that's the only way you're going to get to a high reliability organization. Now, don't take me wrong, you can do it being draconian and chop heads off every time there's an error. That's not sustainable. You can get there for a year, you can get there for a year and a half. That will not sustain itself. You're pretty soon you're going to run out of heads to chop.
Right.
So it's going to require a new culture and a new way of doing things and looking at things to get there and sustain it.
Yeah. So talking about near misses, I think is where maybe the correlation is. So if we're going to go with that, the draconian culture, I would imagine that people would be afraid to speak up when they see errors or issues that could be avoidable because of that fear, correct?
That's exactly what happens, right? I mean, so there's the quote unquote red rules in hospitals. We have two of them. The Harris Health System, we have two of them, and it has to do, with patient identification, making sure that we are treating the right patient, and then the other one's the timeouts before procedures and surgeries. We have identified those two things that no matter what happens, no matter what else is going on, no matter how bad of a day you're having, no matter how understaffed you are, how overcrowded you are, those two things we will meet 100% of the time, every time with every patient. Now, there are hospitals that have a book full of red rules. And the idea is that every time you break a red rule, chances are you're going to get terminated. And again, I have been part of systems where that happens. Nurses of 10, 15 years of experience commit an error and they're escorted out of the building. You're exactly right. Well, guess what happens to the rest of the nurses? First of all, they're really operating under a lot of stress. And secondly, if they commit that same error, do you really think they're going to report it?
Oh.
Chances are they're not going to. So you don't want that. Yeah, you want to create a culture where there's understanding and there's trust and there's ability to self-report. I say that also, I told you about our two red rules, but there are things that are really, really important enough where it seems minor. So what if I thought Jeff was Muhammad and Muhammad was Jeff? It doesn't seem like. Yeah, but if you guys are, one of y'all is going in there to get an eye surgery and they want to take your appendix out, it's very important.
Yeah.
Totally. No, that makes sense. So tying back to the trust conversation and how trust could play a role in patient safety and outcomes, do you feel that if the employees do not trust their leadership to give them a fair chance or a fair assessment of what mistake happened or a just assessment, that could be maybe what is coming between the trust between the leadership or the management and the employees?
Yeah, I mean that's part of it. And it's not just that. It's not just the related to errors and patient harm and high reliability. I think it's even more fundamental than that. Trusting in fairness, trusting in hearing the employees, trusting in being open to sharing, to understanding, to listening. It's more fundamental Yes, absolutely, with regard to harm and self-report and all of that. But I think it's so much more fundamental than that. And it's really the fundamental things that once you address the bigger things, the self-reporting, it becomes automatic almost. It becomes a, a logical continuation of that relationship. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we internally were having some situation. I'll share a quick story. So we had these Monday morning stand-ups where we brought leaders and directors together, project managers, to report problems to the project so we could solve them, blocks or issues. And more every Monday that I showed up to the meetings, and I was present in the meetings as CEO, and my behaviors were obviously probably not the best at the time. And every meeting, our project managers and leaders were like, no problems, no issues, no problems with our projects at all. It's on time, everything's on track, we're doing good. Only to find out a few weeks later, I'll get a call from a customer saying, hey, our project missed our deadline, it's over budget, like we're not hitting our goals, it's got lots of bugs, it's got lots of software issues. And every Monday I went into those meetings and I'm like, why is my team not being honest with me? Why is my team not sharing these issues and problems? And I came across this study by Amy Edmondson around psychological safety, where she had done research of organizations that had more near misses reported had a better patient quality score versus organizations that reported less near misses had higher patient safety incidences. And believe it or not, like we learned from that study that our team was not psychologically safe to report issues with me on the call because I would become like a litigator. I'd start or you know what is it? The police go and interrogate. Like I start like,
Right.
so what did you do? How did you handle it? What did you do? Why did you let this happen? Why didn't you turn in the report? And ultimately, I created this environment of fear where everybody only showed up to the meeting to let me hear what I wanted to hear, not what I needed to hear. And it impacted the safety of our projects, safety of our delivery, and our quality of our project. Where we are over budget, behind schedule, our customer satisfaction was low. It was all because we never created an opportunity for them to be honest and feel comfortable to give up the information we need to hear. And over there, I'm the servant leader coming to help you remove your blocks and issues, but inherently I created an environment of fear unintentionally. And I had to learn from the hospital cultures and psychological safety and borrow that in our technology business to try and create this environment where people felt comfortable to share. So that was my exposure to psychological safety and patient safety and how we could borrow it in our industry. So I completely hear you when you're saying, how do you create an environment where people can report those near misses and not have fear of repercussion and so forth. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And and this is really uh, mind-boggling to me because you've seen me. I mean, it's like I can't stop smiling, and it's really interesting. When I get frustrated, I smile more. And for people who don't know me, that they find that sometimes I don't know. They find it difficult to understand. As if I actually was in a meeting one time. I was going to tell you something else, but I'm going to tell you this quick story before I get there. This is that I was actually reporting to a new leader. This is many years ago. I have been there for maybe just a couple of months, and it was a big meeting, and we were talking about something, and it's just like it was something that I really thought within 5 minutes we could solve, and it was like an hour and 20 minutes into it, we're talking about the same thing. And it was getting to a point I was really, really getting frustrated with all the discussions that were happening. They were all leaders at my level having this conversation. And people get frustrated, and you can get angry or flustered or whatever. I smile, so I started smiling. My leader actually got very upset, and she stood up. She hit the table and she said, "Obviously, some of you think this is a joke," and she left the room. So I had to go and explain. I actually followed her and said, "This is who I am. So you don't know me right now, but I promise you, this is who I am, and you will see that truly this is just how I react." And she got that. But what I was going to tell you, Mohammed, to your story, is that as much as I like to think that because of the fact that I smile, because of the fact that I not only try to show it, but actually talk about openness and trust and servant leadership and this and that, I'm still being told that people find me intimidating. And I honestly, I struggle with that. I don't want to be intimidating. That's the last thing I want to be. So something about my actions or the way I relay information or the way people are receiving, just not everybody, but enough people for me to try to analyze, self-analyze, and identify, how can I still change because I'm not there. Obviously, I'm not there if people are reacting that way.
Makes sense.
I having worked with Mohammed for almost a decade now, I'll tell you the turning point for me when Mohammed went from intimidating to, let's say, less intimidating. I'm just joking, but it's because I worked very closely with Mohammed over the 10 years, even back in the days when he was much more almost abrasive almost all the time. Sorry, Mohammed.
It's okay.
But there's a period of time when he was really trying to change. For a long period of time, he was really, really working hard. You could tell everything he was doing was like this brute force, kind of like, I'm going to be positive. I'm going to smile. I'm going to be as nice as I possibly can. And it was this facade. Like if you knew him well, he's just gritting his teeth and being as sweet as possible. Even when he's really upset, he's just like, okay, well, that's good news here. I get, like, he's just finding every little silver lining and trying to just force it out. And I just remember, there was a point when Mohammed, you kind of came to peace with kind of what you really wanted to be. And we found more of a mission behind what we were trying to do. And we kind of learned more about ourselves through writing the book and all that stuff. As we were working on this stuff, you turn a corner where I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, where it was less about trying to cover up how you felt or anybody felt. This is when we would start having meetings and you just be like, I just want to share something openly, and I know this might come off, XYZ, but I have to just say it and I'll put it out there. And it's stuff that would make the whole room really awkward for like, a good 30 seconds. Like nobody knew what to say. It's just quiet. Everyone's just on the call, just waiting to see who would say something next. But then you look at the end of those meetings and we would all leave kind of like we just ripped the Band-Aid off, address an elephant in the room. And then, it wasn't one meeting. It was like that. And then the next one. And you get used to Mohammed kind of being this person who is not going to hold back who he is. He's not going to, I keep switching from talking about Mohammed in third person to first person. Sorry, Mohammed, I know you're right here.
Yes.
But I just want to share that because I have this perspective. Always, I'm the only I'm the minority here. I'm the non-CEO on this conversation. But as someone who looks up to Mohammed, but also I know today, like, I'm not intimidated by Mohammed. It's what's left is respect and like a true following. But before that, there was always an element of fear still driving it, because you're kind of like, that you don't want to be the one to tip Mohammed over into the other space, into a bad place. And today, I know I'll tip Mohammed into a bad space, and we'll just talk about Mohammed. Last week, we had a call where we had a meeting. He and I disagreed on something at about 3 p.m. We got off, both of us pretty upset. And he texted me at 6 p.m. We talked at 6:30 that day. And we're like, look, man, here's what I was feeling. He's like, here's what I was feeling. I was like, cool. Are we cool? Like, we solved it. And that would never have happened a long time ago and stuff. So that's just how I feel about that topic, just from a perspective of non-CEO in this. So
Yeah.
Jeff,
I,
that's a really
I,
good perspective. Actually, you know what? You gave me an idea that I'm going to
uh,
actually do in my next meeting. So thank you for that.
awesome.
let me know how
All
that
right.
turns out.
Yeah. I think the last thing to say, I think what changed was when I went to those meetings and started to share my failures or my near misses, and that's when I felt like I gave permission for everyone else to be comfortable to say, you know what, if Muhammad can mess up, so can I. But as long as it's not intentional, as long as there is no malintent, I think I was able to inadvertently create an environment where people felt comfortable to say, hey, you know what, I messed up. I forgot to send the report. I forgot to do proper testing before the project was deployed. This is where we screwed up, but this is how we will avoid it going forward. What I realized was that I had this immense amount of power or influence where if I was to be the first one to say, I messed up, I screwed up, I made a mistake, it all of a sudden opened up the permission and gave everyone else the permission to also come and say, you know what, I messed up. If my CEO can mess up, then I can mess up. And that's how we started to see our projects become more on time. We got issues reported. Our customers started to feel like we were able to come proactively with problems to them versus hiding it till the end. And that's what I saw was a big turning point, was when I was able to be vulnerable, then the rest of the team took that as, okay, I have permission to also make mistakes.
And we're still working on it, right? We're trying to work that way. Like I'm still working on it personally as we work our way down the leadership, because if you kind of compare it to like just an accountable culture, we got better at reporting mistakes, but we can still get better at reporting near misses and learnings and things like that along the way. And that you can't do it alone, as Muhammad, as the person. Like we're working. Actually, that leads me to a question for you, Dr. Porsa. Like how are you kind of trying to spread? I hear a lot of good things coming from him. Really, really great to hear that there's someone at the top of the leadership chain that has this mindset. But from what I've seen, it doesn't always just automatically just transfer downward or outward to others. How are you kind of actively spreading this culture, through your leadership?
It well, that's the idea that you gave me actually for my next meeting. But in honestly, it's for lack of a better word, is the during the meeting is showing the humility that. It, and it's really interesting because I want to be careful with what I'm about to say. I don't want it to come across as like ambivalence. Um, I know I'm the CEO of this system, but when I enter a meeting, uh, I don't want to be how can I say this? I was going to say I don't want to be seen as a CEO. It's not that. Yes, I do want to be seen as a CEO, but the freedom that I want to create in the meetings, that's really important for people to. What I don't want to happen, and is it's a journey. It's going to take a while. When my people say things, it can't be like every time they say something, they stop and look at me.
Yeah.
It's way more than just me. This is not about me. I think that message is really important, and I keep trying to emphasize that this is not about Dr. Porsa. This is not about the COO or the CMO or whatever. This is about Harris Health System. This is about our patients at the end of the day, and we all have a part to play. We all have a part of the answer. None of us have whole answer. We all have to be a part of it. And I think that's what I'm trying to answer your question, Jeff. This is what I'm trying to instill in our leadership group, that it's going to take all of us. And it's interesting. It keeps happening, right? It's just like, I observe one leader acting a little out of alignment. It's just like, you just have to bring that leader and, bring it to his or her attention that, what, when you did this, this is how it could have been interpreted. And, 9 out of 10 times, they really were not aware. And they can self-correct, and, you see the result, and it's very obviously very fulfilling. I want to be the CEO where others can tell me, Dr. Porsa, what you said could have been misconstrued for whatever. We're not there yet, but we're working on that.
Awesome.
Awesome. I love it.
Thank you for sharing. So,
Sure.
what would you like Dr. Porsa's legacy to be with HireSelf? This is your first time as a CEO, CEO of a hospital system. And I've read articles and data that the average tenure of a CEO is less than 4 years at a hospital system. And so, what is important to you for your legacy as a CEO of HireSelf or any future health system that you might work at?
Yeah, and thank you for asking that question. Actually, I once in a while I write a little communication to all my system, and I have recurring communications about the business of HireSelf system, and those go out once a week almost. But every couple of months, I send a personal statement to the HireSelf employees across the system. And really, there's no timing. It's not like every couple of months I'll send one. Sometimes in 1 month I'll send 2, and sometimes in 3 months I don't send any. And I think it's on purpose. I really only do it when I'm moved to do it. Something happens, and I feel the need to express it to the rest of the system. And so the question that you're asking was actually asked of me. I think I said it at the beginning of this conversation that every other Monday, I speak at our new employee orientation. And, at the end of my talk with them, I just open it up to questions, and they ask questions, and I answer them to the best of my ability. And it's usually about the business of healthcare. But one time, one of the new employees asked me, Dr. Porsa, what do you want your legacy to be? And I honestly did not have a good answer. I did not. I kind of gave the textbook response. I want to be the CEO who helped HireSelf achieve its mission, or I don't know, so some not very inspiring response to that question. But almost a week later, over the weekend when I was visiting one of the hospitals, one of the nursing staff at one of the units came and gave me a hug and said, Dr. Porsa, I love it that you love us, that you show us that you love us. And again, a light bulb moment. That's what I want my legacy to be. I want to be the CEO who loved his employees and was not afraid of showing that he loved his employees. Ever since then, and it's really interesting, this almost like I got a permission slip to start telling people that I love them. Including this last Friday, I was at the pharmacy graduation program. And I told our senior vice president of pharmacy operations, his name is Michael Nadi, Dr. Nadi. I just said it, at the end of my speech, I said, I love you, Michael. There was no reason for it, but I just felt like I had to say it because I was so proud of the program that he had put together. So that's what I want my legacy to be. The CEO loved his employees. I was not afraid to show it.
Wow.
Love it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Dr. Porsa, that is unheard of CEOs using that type of language at a workplace. And so did you hesitate? How did you feel initially, and how are you feeling now? Like, what are your thoughts there?
I was absolutely hesitant. Because you're right. It's not that everyday recurrence, and it's not like I had seen another CEO who did it. I love my previous CEO in Dallas. Great guy. I think he comes the closest to a saint that ever was. But that was not part of our vocabulary. That was not part of our everyday thing about going around and telling folks that we love them. So yes, I was very hesitant about it. But a couple of things happened. One, it was that reaction from the employee, and I think the other thing was that it's one of those things, right? It's not like you wake up and all of a sudden you feel comfortable telling people that you love them, right? It's you build to that moment. And I think what had happened previous to this statement was another statement that I had sent out. It was at the it was after or maybe during the presidential election, and the hostility toward the Asian communities was escalating, and it just, again, one of those moments that I felt like I needed to say something as a CEO of the Harris Health System. And I remember I wrote the statement talking about different things, and there was a sentence in there where I said, I always just write freehand and then I'll start, going over it and think through it. I wrote it, and the sentence that I wrote was that I am ashamed to say that I am part of the problem. I was talking about, systemic racism and biases and all of that. That's what I wrote. And when I finished, I went back and read it. I said, ooh, ashamed? Do I really want to say I am ashamed? Maybe, and I changed it. I said, I hate to think that I'm part of the problem, or I really like to be part of the solution. I don't know how many times I changed it. The whole thing took me like 30 minutes to write. I spent 2 weeks agonizing over that one sentence. But it finally occurred to me that if that is how I felt, to say it otherwise would be so dishonest, and it would be the opposite of the message that I was trying to send. So I sent it exactly the way it was, and the reaction was extremely positive, as you can imagine. When people see statements like that, they know that you're not faking it. Like nobody's going to fake being ashamed publicly. So yeah, it takes several incidents to get you to a point where you really feel empowered by the reaction that you receive. That is not only okay, it's actually well received. That that's what they want. And why not? Why not? We keep talking about culture, and we're talking about leadership, and we talk about how true leaders, quote unquote true leaders, lead not by power or title, but lead by influence, right? What is more influential than love? There is nothing else. I mean, it's just like, what a wonderful way to lead, by loving those that you're trying to lead. And if you're fortunate enough to have the capacity to show that to the folks that you're trying to lead, what a great influencer.
Wow.
And what a wonderful way to close our show out. That was amazing. Thank you. Dr. Porsa, it's been really inspirational talking to you today. I can't thank you enough, because we obviously are these types of messages and these things that we're always breaking them apart, strategizing around them, trying to pick them apart. But it's not often enough that we get to talk to it at a practical level and apply it to the real world with real situations, real people. And you coming here and sharing with us, very honestly and vulnerably, really appreciate it, because we're hearing the realities of the struggles and the mindsets that you have. And it took a lot for you to share that. And I want to acknowledge that. And thank you for joining us here today to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
Yes. Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Porsa. I got goosebumps for the end as you were sharing your stories. It was really inspiring.
Yep,
Yes.
absolutely. And we will talk to you hopefully soon, and hopefully have more opportunities to hear how your story goes. And good luck with your legacy that I know you're on the right track to leave.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Here at Love as a Business Strategy, we are posting new episodes every Wednesday, and you can read more about our story and our mission to bring humanity back to the workplace by checking out our book on Amazon or any book retailer. And you can also visit loveasabusinessstrategy.com for more information. If you like what you heard today, please do leave us a review, subscribe on Apple and Spotify, all that good stuff, and be sure to always share the love. See you all next week.